kind of self-awareness, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's like an advancement of self-awareness, if you like, using it as a tool to reflect.
Yeah, and it's something that I've always kind of gone, well, what's the next step from this? So, for example, we talk about mental health in the workplace, and we have mental health first aid. Absolutely fabulous. Let's get the awareness there that there is this thing called mental health and what it all means. But what's next? What's the response in the workplace? What's the systematic approach when someone is struggling? And if we're giving people the awareness to identify that they're struggling, but we're not actually having a structured response when it happens, how confident are they going to be declaring that they're struggling?
Good point. Yeah, exactly. And that's a very valid point. It's almost, that we're almost looked upon to be strong and not to show our weaknesses. I mean, it is changing, thank God. But in big business, I mean, I did a mental health day here in Brazil, one of the bigger companies, one of the most elite companies that the very talented and privileged strive for. Their English has almost got to be as good as their Portuguese. I mean, that's how high the standards are. And they're all quite young, very enthusiastic. One of the biggest things I got from working there that day was how underneath the surface they were struggling.
Yeah.
And this was a very aware corporation. I'm not going to name the corporation. Very aware, very in touch with mental health. They got me, I brought a colleague in as well, because they wanted to find out more about how therapy works and this kind of thing. And yet underneath the kind of like facade, if you like, was a lot of young people like swans gliding over the water with their feet flappy like hell, sort of hell. And how do we encourage us to put our feet up and show the world that they're flapping? We're not always strong, we've got a shadow side to us that should be allowed to come out, say that help. I'm really breaking down, and getting a positive kind of like affirmation from that point as well. I think it's so important.
Yeah, and it's that kind of situation which I think has actually been exacerbated by things like corporate membership to psychological organisations, where organisations are told what they should be doing for the mental health of their workforce. In actual fact, the workforce is being stifled because of this jumping through somebody else's hoops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the expectation.
Yeah. So, it's one of the reasons why, out of all of the achievements that APA has worked towards and the development that's gone on in the last, if we think it's now sort of 16 months since Von and I first went, we can do something different, to where we are with 5 months of a brand new accreditation system. But what I'm most excited about is what comes in January with the ethical and psychological reviews, because that really takes everything that you've spoken about on the corporate side and say to businesses, you tell us what you are doing. What is your response to the mental health situation in your workplace? And let the professionals either advise you or recognise what you are doing is brilliant.
And yeah, I think that's the difference between the governing bodies that I've belonged to before, and I now have come to APA, is it's like, if you don't fulfill the criteria, which, look, most people that work with the BACP, let's name it, actually agree that supervision and CPD are very, very important. You've got to be, either you've got to be complacent or a bit of an idiot. I'll go as far as to say that I don't need supervision and I don't need to keep myself updated with the latest kind of information that's coming through. Neuroscience is one of the biggest breakthroughs we've had. to not keep up with that, to not help your clients realize that, you've got to be, it's got to be something wrong with you as a therapist. You've got to go to your supervisor and say, look, I'm not functioning as well as I could be for my clients. I go as far as saying that. That might sound a bit brutal to some. So most of us recognise. The problem with the BACP was that they were kind of like using it as like a stick to kind of a bit like a law. You know, if I speed over 40 miles an hour, I could get away with it, but I might also be arrested, get a ticket. That's what it felt like. With APRA, it doesn't. We all know that we have to keep to the best of our ability for our clients. And the stick is our clients, not the BACP. Our clients are the stick. If I don't perform to the best of my ability to bring the latest information, to keep myself clear, secure, they don't come and pay me the money I'm asking for. My business fails. I don't need a governing body to hold a stick over me. You know, that's in a private practice. In an organisation, you've got the company and the organisation asking for the best you can be. So we don't need a governing body that that hangs over us like a law, you know, that we need to feel even more kind of like afraid of. We need a supportive body that's going to say, explain who you are, what you're doing openly without fear, and let your colleagues and peers have a disagreement about that. You know, occasionally even get offended slightly, with it respectfully, and feel what that's like. And that is very different. APRA for me is I'm feeling supporting the part of, but not in a way that's collusive by any means, because my peers are very outspoken and are all for kind of saying, well, I think it's this way, and you know, and that is challenging, but challenging in a very productive way. That is like feeling supported, but challenge your views. For me, that's much more productive. Having my views challenged with more information from other colleagues, it's more educational than being held accountable for if I miss a supervision session once in a year, where, you know, whatever, that you might not have accreditation or, you know, whatever.
And this is where both Siobhan, myself, and I truly believe the whole of the core torchbearers group sits, is there is no point in a group of people coming up with a set of mandatory, you must do this in order to deal with your clients. Whether that we're talking to a business organisation or whether we are dealing with a collective of therapists or a single therapist, a coach, a counsellor, whatever that individual role might be, what to us, I truly believe makes the most amount of sense is to be able to say, come and share what you do. In a space that's safe, that is completely open to your potential clients, because they will then grow confidence that the people that they are witnessing engaging are the people that are going to help them the most when they need it. And businesses to be able to say, we have a crisis. There is a mental health crisis across the world. For whatever reason the species has got to that, it's culminating now. So for businesses to be told, jump through this hoop, and we will say that, you know, you're doing the best you can for the mental health of your colleagues, to us isn't shown in the evidence of the crisis that is happening. So
I think, I think one of the greatest minds in therapy was probably, arguably, Carl Rogers, who decided that the best way to help us all grow and to you know, not to jump through hoops is the core conditions. Most therapists, if not all of us, recognise we bring some of that into our work, because research shows now that the relationship is paramount. Without the relationship, you can't go to relation depth. You can't go to relation depth, the work is harder to achieve. So what this guy, Carl Rogers, challenged the establishment, challenged the hierarchy in the US. He was laughed at apparently for quite a while. Now we've all took his core conditions as well. This is the way forward. But yet we've got businesses and hierarchical kind of so-called governing bodies actually going back to the old way, rather than of the core conditions, what most of us recognise as being paramount in growth.
Yeah.
And acceptance is growth, and
Yeah.
not sort of hoop jumping or wheel spinning or like stick holding above you, feeling fear. It's the opposite to growth.
Yeah. And, you know, we've had a couple of conversations recently where we've talked about why I was, you know, the most successful, consistently the most successful, and why is everybody else kind of caught in this kind of middle ground. And one of the things that has always stood out for me is that the therapeutic relationship works in the therapeutic arena, but when you look at the business side of the therapeutic world, we're not using the same principles. When you look at businesses and those that are most successful, they are more aligned to the therapeutic principles than they are business principles. And for me, this is the uniqueness of it's the uniqueness of the way successful therapists work.
Exactly.
Aligned with the therapeutic principles.
Well, I mean, if you think about one of the greatest business people in this world, I mean, Richard Branson, his philosophy throughout his career that I've heard is to allow your employees to feel valued. It's a simple philosophy. Value the people that work for you.
Yeah. And the thing with RB is he has never shied away from saying, we'll try this, and if it works, we'll run with it, and if it doesn't, we'll cut it. And
trial and error.
You know, I have a huge amount of respect for the way he's grown Virgin and the way he's developed the ethos. And you know, Virgin is one of those companies that, when we look at the way they work and the synergy and the sharing of experience and the importance of knowledge at the base of everything that they do, they completely tie in with the Psychological Hive, which, as you know, is my kind of baby.
Yeah.
But the whole premise is so attuned to the therapeutic relationship that it beggars belief sometimes how the therapeutic community has not adopted the business model that elevates from the therapeutic principle.
Well, I mean, it is amazing when you think about it. You know, when I was taught to be a therapist, there was a lot of what we could and couldn't do, and it was unsaid, but there was obviously you can't sort of take advantage of a vulnerable client, you know, in any way, which shape or form. That goes without saying, but that's definite. But this stuff, it was a lot of in the training. You can say this is better to say than that. It's no definite, but it was when I came out of all my training, it was like I was fearful of how to respond in the practice room, because I had all of these kind of doubts about what was positive and what was negative. As an integrative counsellor, there was a lot of information, and I better play it safe, because wow, this is, you know, we've got to be careful of our clients, they're vulnerable, and rightly so, and absolutely. But again, there was a lot of fear. And do you think of the courage that Rogers must have had to have changed the status quo? And it's like, we need to use our courage as much as our fear. Our fear is a real good tool. It's great. You know, it stops us crossing the line. And that can be a real positive. But we've also got to counterbalance that with courage.
Has to be, in my mind, fear should always be the baseline which we don't go below, but it's the springboard for where we go forward.
Yeah, the springboard to courage. And I think that, you know, as therapists, we need to be morally more courageous into finding new ways to help our clients, because the world has changed. And the core conditions, I think, are as relevant today as what they ever were. Yeah. And all of the other therapies. But I remember one of my colleagues saying that she had a very experienced supervisor. I worked with her very closely, and I adopted a lot of the way she worked. She was amazing. That she was one of the most economical therapists that he had, this supervisor. And I remember that thinking, wow, what made her so economical? That she got the work done in a very safe, which is a very, very well established therapist, in a very safe, a very productive way. And I like that. And I like the fact that we've got, you know, I've studied addiction my whole life, and I want to find a new way of helping people struggle against their addictive behaviours and traits. But how can I do that in an ethically, but in a therapeutic way that gets to the point and gets to the crux of the matter, and helps people sort it out? My clients are asking me a lot of the time, I've got this problem, I need help with this. I'm too busy to be doing this. And, you know, how do we do that in today's world? If the world has changed beyond recognition from many of the greats, I mean, there's some greats around now, but I think we have to be courageous, and we have to kind of change therapy. And I would go as far as to change some of the ways we work. And how do we know what works unless we try?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things you pick up, you know, having time to do this particular task or whatever it might be. One of the things that I learned early on was a technique that was kind of developed from the old flight control systems.
Okay.
So you have a task that is, you know, a block of time, and the idea is that you actually break that block of time up for that task into manageable chunks. Yeah. But the last part of that kind of block is always the lesson from that chunk. And that chunk is kind of removed and put further into the future. So you might say, I have a task to do that's going to take me an hour, and 45 minutes of that is going to be done on Monday morning. The last 15 minutes of that is the evaluation, and you're going to do that on Thursday afternoon. So you've got the same amount of time, but you're just managing what you do with it and where you do it in your diary. And it was something that was, as I say, it was developed from flight management, because they have the flight time of an aircraft, they have the taxiing after landing, and those two chunks over the overall duration is one job.
Yeah, I know that you're only allowed to do so many hours flying, and they don't class any of the other stuff until you take off the land as flying time. A very close friend of mine's a pilot here, and he told me that. I didn't realise it's their way of, even standby is not classed as flight hours. So the hours seem like really nice, but the hours actually work. And that's kind of what we're going back to. And I think a lot of clients today, because of the lifestyle, are deserving. You know, I'm developing with a hypnotherapist friend of mine a model where we're focusing. It's more and more on the issues that are brought, and not, you know, not allowing like a focus therapy, not allowing almost, unless it's really with the collaboration of the client, to go away from that. Because, you know, open-ended therapy can be very expensive, and it can open up stuff that maybe the client didn't even want to do in the beginning. Yeah. And be always, you know, working economically, but also always working with the client and saying, look, you are moving away from this, going there. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah.
You know,
it's about allowing them to understand that over the course of a period of time, they will have put coping strategies into place to avoid dealing with certain things. And as you peel back each one of those layers, you are getting closer to dealing with this, but are you ready to go there? And having that confidence as a professional to be able to say to a client, if you're not ready, we don't have to push down.
And giving them choice, yeah, and choice. If this is what you came with. I know that brief therapy and time limited therapy actually look at this, but I think I'm looking at it even more so as something that seems to be working. And I check in with my clients all the time. I always ask, how was your session? What seemed to work for you? What doesn't work? And slowly that I'm learning that new ways are available.
Yeah. And the thing is, most people that are in those rooms ultimately have an experience where they don't have options. They've not been given options. They've had limited options. They've had bad choices, and only bad choices laid in front of them. And as soon as somebody can say, actually, I'm going to open this door, and behind this door, you've got 17 different doors to choose. And we're going to take a look at each of them. We're going to work on what each of it means. But ultimately, the choice is yours. All of a sudden, you've got a different engagement and a different
empowering. Yeah.
It's
been great talking to you.
Absolutely phenomenal to speak, as always. I hope those that have been able to spare the time to share the whole conversation will have gained a huge amount of insight into you.
Excuse the interruptions, but I'm at work, and because I haven't got a client in, the reception knows there's no one in. I've got a couple of people popping in and out, but I do excuse that. But
it's absolutely fine. And I really hope that it kind of prompts people to engage and ask questions and generate some conversation around kind of some of the things that are being spoken about. So thank you very much for your time.
I mean, there's a lot of what I say I believe in because of my experience, but my colleagues at APA and any other of my colleagues, please feel free to challenge any ideas I have. This is what helps me see new ways and grow also. And this is what helps us all, I think. Let's not be afraid to say, well, I think it's this way, or maybe it's that way,
And this is where APA stemmed from.
Yeah,
if
that's freedom.
Like what is happening, there is no point in shouting at the wind or screaming at the rain for being wet.
I challenge my clients. Please challenge me. Help me grow. That works for me also. And that's what I love. I love that about APA. I love that. I've disagreed, and the process of disagreeing, as we've said afterwards, wow, I've learned so much from that. And if we can learn more from each other, we can supply more to our clients, which is ultimately why we're doing this.
Yeah, and ultimately, every step that APA is making, every process that we are working through, and you'll know some of those that are obviously still in the pipeline, but everything that we're working to stems from that one set of focuses: create, increase, provide, and enhance. And if we can do that at every level, then the clients, the potential clients, the children that are ultimately, unfortunately, in situations that are going to require our services, are going to have the best experience moving forward. And that's all we can hope for. So, Geoff, thank you so much for your time.
Dave.
And enjoy the rest of your afternoon now.
Yeah, I've got to get ready for my next client. Thank you so much, Dave. You take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.